bring the mayor's panel for their conversations here. And this is all centered around loving our smart cities with trust. And leading on the conversations will be Jonathan. So, Jonathan, if I can hand it over to you.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be at the Cybersecurity Symposium for Smart Cities. It's one of the highlights of our year, a calendar year, and love the work the team has put in, and we gained so many rich insights from so many incredible people around the world and across the U.S. who have a lot to contribute in terms of ideas and best practices, and we can learn a lot from each other. So it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to host this panel. Right now we have two remarkable colleagues here. We were expecting another, but perhaps you'll join us a little later. But I am joined here by Kim Walker-LaGrue, who is the Chief Information Officer with the great city of New Orleans. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. I just saw you recently in Los Angeles. It was nice.
That's right. Being smart.
And also my good friend and colleague here, Rob Lloyd, the Chief Information Officer of the great city of San Jose.
Hey, Jonathan. Hey, Kim.
Hey, Rob.
Good to see both of you. It's wonderful to be part of this panel. So today we're going to be talking about loving our smart cities with trust. This is an interesting topic. You know, when we are talking to our different stakeholders and engaging our community on this topic, there's a lot of different feelings about it. Some people are really enthusiastic. Others are maybe on the other side of the spectrum. And then a lot of people are in the middle. They don't quite maybe understand what the role of technology is to move a city forward. You know, they are sometimes concerned about risks and the challenges of that, and whether it's a good use of city resources, time, and money. So all of that combined contributes to potentially an environment where trust isn't 100% yet, and we have to work towards that. And so I'm joined by two people who work in this under these conditions, I guess, every day, including myself, who definitely worked and continues to work with cities on this topic each and every day. So let's start with the first question. This is going to be for you, Kim, and a little bit of a long question. You can start, and we'll get to you, Rob, as well. So the question is, you know, executing on a long-term vision for building a smarter city requires the buy-in from a lot of stakeholders, including the communities we serve. Central to that buy-in is gaining trust from these constituents, right? What has worked for you in gaining trust, particularly related to emerging technologies and their risks, to enable the important work of city progress to proceed? What has worked for you?
Well, I'll start with just what we know. Is that we've seen a historic decline in public trust in government over the past decades, right? So this has just been happening, and we have to be cognizant of that feeling. So this is a very relevant topic. I love this panel and the discussion that we're having. But what we are feeling, it's a pushback against proposed city projects. Sometimes there's cynicism about our intentions and our ability to handle public dollars responsibly and spend them in the best interest of our people. So when we look at things like this, it made us think about how we could garner and maintain the trust that we do have in our citizens. And I think that's got to be an active process. We could use tools and technologies to observe and monitor public trust, right? So we could use sentiment gatherers, or we could really troll our public channels and even our private channels to see what that sentiment looks like. However, the mayor has established an office called Project Y, and that office is dedicated in our city to understanding and addressing the underlying lack of trust. And we know that this doesn't come from nowhere, right? A lot of communities legitimately have terrible experiences with government, and our work is to address that. We really have to fix that. So we've developed a project and this office to identify the root causes of mistrust and dissect them, and then figure out why people feel the way they do and what works with those residents to build a better solution.
Mm-hmm. Great insights there, and thank you for that. Not great to hear that things are trending in the wrong direction, but perhaps with guys like you, your leadership, we can turn the corner. Well, I'm an optimist. I think you're an optimist too.
Right.
Rob, what's your perspective on this? What do we need to do, and where's San Jose right now?
So I think one of the most powerful things about where technology is today is that, especially coming out of COVID, we see two things. One is that technology is automatically part of the solution in these transformational questions like housing insecurity, homelessness, blight, justice reform. And so our role has never been so clear as now in how we're going to change things for the better, and with the investments that are available to us right now, once in a lifetime, that will change things for the next 10, 20 years, right? Number two is and I love the title of this session as well, because there is that aspect of trust. If we build and sustain that trust, we can do a lot of things together. If we ever lose it and manage poorly, that important relationship, then a lot of things get harder, and rightfully so. So the thing I would say, Jonathan, is that multidisciplinary problem solving that is so key right now. IT is that critical partner that's going to allow it to happen in many ways, and enable organizations to redesign themselves. But we do have to have digital privacy. We do have to have technology solutions that actually respect security and that information and don't harm anyone. So there's a balance between civic good and the risk that we take, and we have to make those decisions smartly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent context building. Now, I mean, you're moving for your team, and the Smart City team at the City of San Jose are moving forward with some incredible projects, and you're succeeding in many, expanding access to the internet. What would you say are some of the winning strategies there? Why are you getting the trust and the buy-in from more and more people in San Jose?
It's actually a very powerful question, Jonathan, because if we do it as a technology solution, we're going to get average results. The key to our success here is that we partner in a masterful way, and that's part of our identity. We're the leanest big city in the country. We're the only big city in the country that shrinks during the day because our residents go to Apple or Google or Facebook to work, and then they come home and use our services. They used to go to your previous city too to work. But it's a very different context that you set, and in the sense that we have to do those things that help the community. There's two, maybe three variables. One is that we're responding to something the community needs and is saying is important. It's something the city should do. Number two, it's that our solutions respect the trust and maintain the trust, in that we protect them as much as we solve the problem. And number three, we partner really well to try new and different things, because the old-fashioned solutions, we can't throw money and people at problems. When you're that lean, you have to be able to do the novel. And so that combination, just to give you three examples, covering 200,000 plus people in COVID with Wi-Fi and devices, partnership with Eastside Union High School District, with AT&T, with SmartWave, with Ruckus, with Facebook and others to say, solve this problem together. Testing data and response with Adobe and Oracle, and Accenture and Yline and Splunk, to even the smallest projects we have at Dell and their data science team in 311. Everything we do together with someone else, and we get a lot farther, a lot faster. Yeah,
great examples, and partnerships are so key.
I'm on, Justin. Thank you.
Yes, you are, sir. There's the Mayor Benjamin from the City of Columbia.
I will at least let you guys know I have been listening to you and watching you and enjoying you from the peanut gallery.
Great timing, by the way. I'm going to immediately go to a question for you. We were just starting to talk about, what's working in terms of building trust, particularly when it comes to, proposing and rolling out some of the more emerging technologies, some of the perhaps the things we haven't proven for the last 20 years. I mean, do you have example of some work that you've been doing with your team that has built trust? in particular?
Sure. I certainly want to co-sign on all the comments that have been made already. We are, I'm in the center of an amazingly technologically advanced building in downtown Philadelphia today. I'm not in Columbia, South Carolina today. The weather is actually much nicer in Columbia right now. But I'm here at a time where we're in a period of amazing and tectonic change. This country and this world emerging from the greatest pandemic since 1918, the greatest economic disruption we've seen probably in an election year since 1932, and the greatest social unrest that we've seen since 1968, all experienced in the last year and a half, in which everything, the world that we know it, has changed dramatically. That it's against the backdrop, as was referenced earlier, of watching poll after poll, Gallup polls, Pew polls, whatever you want to look at, over the last several decades of, yes, eroding trust in public institutions. And we're in an amazing time, and we've learned, obviously, that the greatest tonic as you're dealing with these challenges is usually just offering truly transparent and honest government. That people are smart enough or thoughtful enough that if, in fact, you open up the doors to government, that you share the data, that you share the information with people as it is their information, it's amazing the amount of trust that you can build by having that level of transparent, open, and honest government. It is a predicate towards offering good government. If you're able to do that and pair it up with the amazing technological advances we're seeing with innovation, and AI, and advanced machine learning, and truly building truly smart and compassionate cities, then in fact we can start really, I think, transforming our cities into this new normal that we're all very tentatively stepping into, again against a backdrop of challenges unlike anything we've seen before. So a very specific example, and so I won't be too long-winded, really started with us pre-pandemic as we engaged in partnership with the Obama administration around building a 21st century policing agency, one that had to be built on a transparent, open, accountable relationship of new trust with the communities that we sought to serve and protect. And we did that by completely changing the way in which we policed our city. Every bit of data, internal affairs information became available to our public. We shared information about policing and arrests and outcomes in different parts of our city. We shared our arrest information by race across the city. If there happened to be an incident where an officer was to shoot someone, those sad situations, we shared the officer's background. We shared the race of the officer, the race of the person who was shot. We shared how it was publicly investigated, the outcome of the investigation. You have to start, particularly in the world in which we live right now, with a completely open and transparent communication. We put the president of Urban League on our hiring board. It has to start with a foundation of trust, because you can never have a truly smart city until you have a truly equitable city. And you cannot build an equitable city without having that foundation of trust to start with.
Well, thank you. Great insights there and great advice. I really appreciate that. Kim, going back to you. So, assuming that, we have some successes with our smart city initiatives, and I know you have plenty of successes, despite some of the challenges that we all experience too. What do we need to do to maintain the trust? Now you've got the team on board, you've got your constituents or your stakeholders on board. What have you seen working to keep it going, keep and maintain that trust?
Well, first of all, I think our constituents need to see themselves in our government, right? So when we are communicating with them, they need to see people that look like them, possibly think like them. They need to know that their interests are heard and being protected. So keeping those things in mind, that means that everyone has to be inclusive, that our solutions have to be inclusive. Everyone has to have an effective seat at the table. And as we become a smart city, we can't be a smart city if we're leaving communities out of our solutions, right? So part of the trust is making sure that everyone feels like they're participating and they are included in our solutions. That's a challenge in a city with a digital divide, where we know that 40% of our adult population reads at a fifth grade or below level. Then that means technology can't become a barrier for them, right? And that it's a great form of communication, and we've got to use it the best way that we can to disseminate information. I would always maintain that a smart city is an informed city. Smart is about information and making sure that everyone has access to that information. So we have to just stay in the community. We have to continue to talk to people at their levels on mediums and using mediums that are most appropriate and comfortable to them. They've got to know that we are committed to making sure that those channels remain open to them. And then it can't all be electronic. So we have to make sure that we have a barrage of solutions and we have an appropriate mix of the channels that are most appropriate to our residents. So I think in maintaining dialogue and communication with our residents, that's the way that we want to maintain the trust that we have. And, I could talk about other technology solutions that I think would enable us to do that. But at the core of what we think we need to do in the city of New Orleans to maintain the trust as we build up a smart city is to make sure that everyone is included and that they see their places in the technology that we're using for them to benefit them.
Yeah, no, fantastic answer. I love that. It reminds me of my time in public service. And, I came from the private sector, and, in the private sector, you kind of get to choose your customers, right? You decide the markets you want to go after. You get to choose your customers and the way that you deliver. In the private sector, in the public sector, that's not the case. And even as we digitized intensely, we had to remember that you still have to have analog ways to engage with government, and places for people to turn up and fill in forms and have areas where they can get assistance. So great point you made about being able to ensure that all channels are open. Now, I want to ask a question for Rob. And the question is this: in what ways does a high degree of trust in smart city systems manifest in a community? Well, look, put another way, what does it look like and feel like when our communities believe in the work we're doing? That's an easy question for you, Rob.
Yeah, no sweat. So I think you're going to hear it in a couple different voices and rituals. So the voices that you hear at your council meetings and this more digital public, we now, instead of having a few dozen people, you have hundreds of people who are e-commenting or even attending, and you hear them directly. Number two, you also hear from the community-based organizations and partners that we work with that actually are our trust rubber when we're trying to do certain things with certain audiences. And they're harder to reach because of sometimes digital divides or access divides or language divides. And so those relationships and those strong neighborhoods and associations are a mechanism through which you engender trust and work in a way that's respectful of their associations and their affinities. You also hear it from the electeds, who are the voice of the people that they call constituents. And they tell us very clearly and very crisply what they're hearing from their constituents on a regular basis. And the tone of that can be generally one of two extremes, and it's almost like bimodal. You very rarely hear the middle. You hear nothing, or you hear people who are very concerned about things, or from some people who are very happy about things. But in the rituals of the city, it manifests in a couple different ways. In the budget process, when we're deciding kind of moral decisions about what we do, that are reflected in that equity artifact that is our capital infrastructure. You see and hear things about what we should be investing in and who we should be helping and who the hurting parts of our community are, so that the opportunity is accessible by all. And then you also hear about it in the daily operations. You hear from police, for example, people feel unsafe in an area, or in transportation, what are those cameras for? So all that to mean, when we get to some of these key decisions, we say no to as much as we say yes to. And in Silicon Valley, we have lots of opportunities to try new and interesting things. But we do use that fulcrum of, is the civic good balanced by the risk to the people who we need the trust of to do our jobs well? And when we do those projects and we ask for public engagement, we actually have lots of people who engage and give us good feedback. That means the trust is there and the care is there. And in our council sessions, we do have some people who are critiqueful, and sometimes the grunting isn't all that high. But other times we have people who are advocates saying this really helped us in these ways. 311, the digital inclusion efforts, our language machine learning efforts to collapse some of those barriers and let people speak in their own language in real time and converse with us. Those are all very powerful tools, but each one is just another deposit into that trust bank, and you can lose it pretty quickly. But the conversation we have, we're proud of because it allows us to do the right things that are meaningful to the city.
Yeah, I love the answer again. And I really like the aspect of the budgeting process being a reflection on points of view and perspectives and the sentiment of the community. That's really clever. And so right on. I'd love to get actually Mayor Benjamin. I know I think you'll have something great to say about this. I'd love to get your perspective. And as a mayor, what signals do you look for that indicate that you are building trust around a particular initiative?
The challenge is laid out earlier. It becomes the answer to is quite frankly, it's communication and oftentimes constructive criticism and communication. I really want my citizens to be involved in helping shape the city in which they live. The good thing about being a mayor or working with fantastic leaders like Reichental and Sam Ricardo and others is that you have the benefit of yes, dealing with these amazingly complex and challenging issues, but you also have the benefit of getting caught by a constituent at church or at the grocery store, traffic light,
right.
And getting some input. It's amazing in a world that's so interdependent, interconnected right now, how so much communication can get lost in translation right now. So having the opportunity to be engaged with my citizens on digital platforms, on social media, traditional meetings as we all come back into the public realm and the public meeting places. The more feedback I get, if it's good or bad, just that it's feedback, engaged feedback at a neighborhood association, is usually how I can tell people are engaged in shaping the future of their city. I'm a huge believer that the future of each of our cities is subjective. The leadership we give, the type of leadership we give, the type of leadership we give in fortifying neighborhoods. A city is a collection of fantastic individual neighborhoods, unique in their own way. But that type of back and forth dialogue is so key. And if I'm not getting that feedback, I guarantee you I'm not doing everything right. So if I'm not getting that feedback, it means that people are disconnected from the city in a way that is not healthy. So I usually gauge it by the type of feedback I'm getting, again, whether it's positive or negative. I do believe that the big challenge that we all face right now is that we sit at a vantage point of the public sector or private sector where we see the amazing challenges that having smart cities or data-driven cities, how it can really fundamentally improve people's lives, but we oftentimes don't have the time or energy to humanize that data in a way that people can gravitate and understand it and appreciate it. That you gotta have data. Data gives you intelligence. Intelligence helps you create policy, and hopefully, at the end of the day, you're creating a much more equitable, efficient, healthy, stronger city for today, but also for posterity, without having that type of interaction, constructive criticism, intimate feedback from citizens. You'll never be able to humanize that data in a way that allows people to accept it and then build and grow from it.
Yeah, thank you for those important insights. And when I was listening to you, I was thinking of something you kind of alluded to a little bit, but it prompted me to think about the idea that sometimes when there's no communications, that is a form of communications too. So if you're not hearing from some people, we should be concerned about that too, right? Because that might be telling us something. I want to go back to Kip again. And this, after all, is an event about cybersecurity. So I want to kind of drill down on our topic, but in the cybersecurity realm. So, pursuing smart city initiatives elevates the questions of privacy and cybersecurity risk. And so the question is, how do we address these legitimate concerns? And maybe what would help is maybe one example of something that worked for you specifically around those areas.
Sure. So the city of New Orleans had the benefit of a pretty intense cyber attack in 2019, late 2019. But before then, the mayor and her tech chiefs, that would be the CIO and the chief technology officer, we actually developed the video surveillance ordinance to create some regulations to the use of cities' surveillance technology. And that ordinance did not just define, it also restricted some use of technology. But what we tried to do is really say, we understand that this type of technology could be dangerous to some. It could marginalize some people in our communities. And we wanted to acknowledge that as we build our smart cities portfolio and as we take on new endeavors, these are the things that we will allow, but we also wanted the public to know exactly what things we were restricting and what technologies we were restricting and how those surveillance systems would be used. We have a real-time crime center. It's world-class here. It was built out in 2016, 2017 by the previous administration, but it was important for our residents to understand how that technology was being used. And as we develop new technology, what we would do to protect them and their rights. And also, I think having our public safety partners at the table is really important. So those things were developed with them. And now, as we build on that, as we rebuild our city and our infrastructure post-cyber, we've kept everyone at the table. We let our residents know when we are releasing engagements or proposals, soliciting proposals for new smart cities technology. And what has been really effective, as Rob mentioned, is working across the aisle. So there was or is a smart cities working group that includes the legislative side of our city. So our city council, there's a Smart and Sustainable Cities Committee, and we actually introduced this video surveillance ordinance to them. So that allows the public to know that the city really is interested in keeping them safe. So during our cyber attack, we did a lot to message along with our public safety partners. Cybersecurity is an important way that we keep our city safe, and we recognize that as a risk. So we have to make sure that our residents understand that we know that these are legitimate concerns and that we're going to do as much as we can to address them.
Great set of actions there and terrific recommendations. Thank you, Kim. This is a question I'm going to ask you, Rob. It's sort of the same question, but from the perspective of the community rather than us assuming we know what the community wants. And so when it comes to building trust in our smart city efforts, in order that communities can love the potential outcomes, what are you hearing from constituents about what is most concerning to them? And do you think in the time you've been in maybe public service, the concerns are getting better or worse, or where do they stand?
Going backwards first, I think it's just different. The extent that governments and companies and other organizations can see and perceive into a person's life in sometimes deleterious ways. It's not a good thing or something that people have a good feel for. I mean, there was a day when everyone just signed every EULA that popped up and said, yeah, I accept these terms. But now people are really pushing back on what privacy and security mean, right? And so for us, our model really is security and privacy are connected but different. And trust is that intersection. So we need to actually have the things that keep us secure and resilient. And we actually have to have the engagement and intent about all the things we do, and that transparency, as the mayor referred to earlier, to make sure they're part of the conversation and that we're not going too far afield when something isn't aligning with our community. And we actually are creating a case study database for our internal use and reference when we said yes to things and when we said no, and why we did those things. So kind of a continuous lessons learned. And the key point in that is, I think on your question, Jonathan, is for our privacy policy, we're working to take that with the Center for Digital Government, so that that's a national baseline where you can take your privacy principles, you can take a privacy policy, default model job descriptions, a research library of all the materials, so that people can take these steps easily rather than having to reinvent this trust equation all on their own. But for us in particular, there's 7 main elements as we engage with the community around innovative efforts, or even just operational ones like license plate readers, or how we're going to do sideshow intervention and prevention, or even gang youth violence. And our mayor is amazing about seeing both sides of the equation. He wants to do amazing things in smarter ways, but he also preserves that trust as a core belief. And so a couple things I'll just share with you, those 7 elements is, one is that we tell people. One is that we retain just what we need. Another is that we minimize what we collect so that we can't create harm, even if we accidentally meant to, or accidentally landed in it. We would restrict ourselves. Another thing is accountability, how we communicate and do the public engagement process around these technologies, data uses, and services. Accuracy is something you have to commit to, because the data we get can also have lots of flaws often. And then we also are committed to sharing, but in responsible ways and with some tight controls. And the last ethic is actually equity, so that we're mindful of the populations we serve. Algorithmic bias is addressed, how we strive to advance the data-driven way that we work, but also to humanize it and protect things like PII or so forth. So I think, Jonathan, the kind of short shift of that is there's lots of process controls, lots of kind of value commitments, and a lot of processes where we are engaging the people that we're touching.
Fantastic. Not surprised with a great answer there. And by the way, we are watching the chat here on the screen, so keep up the conversation. I haven't seen anything in particular that I need to raise yet with the participants, but very much enjoying the complimentary side dialogue that's occurring too. Now, my next question is for you, Mayor Benjamin, and I think you may have some really great insights on this topic. It's coming up a lot recently, and it's the role of collaboration, basically. So the question is, what role can collaboration play both within our communities and between communities in developing best practices to build systems and solutions with greater trust? What do you think is the growing role of collaboration?
Well, if we learned, I am unmuted, right? If we've learned nothing since the beginning of the pandemic, the importance of intersectoral, intergovernmental partnerships, the importance of public-private partnerships defined by protecting the public trust, but also public-private philanthropic partnerships, a significant number of new philanthropic partners and charitable interests that want to play a much more active role in shaping the world in which we live. They're just downright essential. I mean, they're essential. The reality is that so often we relied purely on government to solve problems. The reality is that the responsibility in a world that's changing so rapidly. And I will tell you, I'm a mayor. I'm glass half full all day, every day. There's always a silver lining in the cloud. But the reality is that we all watched these conversations we've been having around the future of work and around resilience and resilient cities, that many challenges we thought were 15, 20 years off. We're watching AI and automation, advanced machine learning. The pandemic accelerated so many of these changes, in which we were watching in our community. We participated in just a few years ago. Google helped to fund a partnership with Harvard and the Howard University's African American Marriage Association, which we were looking at our city, Long Beach, California, and Gary, Indiana, particularly looking at what the future will look like for Black and Brown communities. And I will tell you that the challenges were particularly telling for those who live in the two bottom quintiles of American economic society, where we thought things would be in 5 years, in 10 years. And we're there in less than a year and a half. What are we doing to make sure that we build strong, meaningful partnerships that can allow us to look at the same problems, but look at them very differently, from different sides of the table, and then develop partnerships with people who live within the values of your city that help you solve those problems is essential, because the reality is that most problems will not be solved by government alone. We ought to, yes, provide the guardrails. We ought to make sure that we're protecting the least among us. We have to make sure that, yes, that as we enforce the will of the majority, as you do in this federal republic, this democracy, you're also protecting the rights of the minority. There's so much to be done that it can only be done with thoughtful, comprehensive partnerships. There's so many in the private sector that we can partner with to help us achieve our goals. It has to be done on terms that reflect our values, but also I wouldn't rule out partnerships with local communities that can help support us as well. But partnerships are essential. The challenges we're facing have been intransigent for many years. It requires us to think putting in new sets of eyes, several new sets of eyes on old sets of problems, if in fact we're going to be changing the fortunes of communities for posterity.
I did want to.
No, we won't go. I'm sorry.
I was going to say it was wonderful to hear your answer, Mayor Benjamin. Actually, all your answers, because you are a new generation of leader in America. You know, you get democracy, but you also get tech, and that's still rather unique with a lot of senior leaders. So I'm thrilled to hear you speak the way you're speaking. So thank you. I think this is an amazing panel. I do want to ask one last question. I'm going to ask it to Kim. And you know, Kim, obviously we're under the gun to wrap.
Okay.
But I did want to just ask you about regional collaboration and the degree to which you think about that and perhaps incorporate it, or how you're thinking about it for the future.
So I'll start with our region. What's unique to our region are natural disasters and other emergencies, right? So weather events are here. That does give us an opportunity to really collaborate, right? Our public safety initiatives have to be coordinated and in good step. And following that model, we're looking to develop regional technology partnerships because we all face the same types of threats. So having those common goals and those common concerns from a public safety level, where we've started is Mayor Cantrell continues to integrate our technology teams with our public safety teams. So when there's an event, we're all communicating and we're all together. And that allows us to really be thinking about how we want to develop regional technology partnerships because we have those alliances that we're already creating. So we're looking at neighborhood alliances, and regional technology alliances that would allow us to collaborate on not just our emergency platforms, but other technologies that benefit our cities, because we share the same risks and concerns here.
Fabulous. Great answer to wrap things. I would just add my 2 cents. I think, as you've all described, the complexity of the environment which we operate is deepening. And it does seem like collaboration internally within our communities and between communities is increasingly important for us to address the great big challenges of the future, and particularly when it comes to trust and building a better and more sustainable communities. So I want to thank you. I'll start with Rob Lloyd. Thank you, Rob. Of course, you were brilliant as usual. I think you have a photographic memory. I think you do. We'll come back to that one day. I'd like to thank you very much, Kim, for your fantastic insights and your examples. And we're very honored to have you here, Mayor Benjamin from Columbia. It's been wonderful to have you, and it gives me optimism to hear from someone like you in your position. So thank you for that. And thank you all very much. It's been such an honor. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure.